The smell of salt and seaweed. That's the first thing he registered. Ethan's eyes opened slowly, gritty and unfocused. He lay on a rough wooden pier. Seagulls shrieked overhead. Where was he? He sat up, head pounding, and took in the unfamiliar surroundings. Colorful fishing boats bobbed gently in the harbor. A bustling marketplace lined the waterfront, filled with vendors hawking strange and exotic wares. This was definitely not his apartment. Panic welled in his chest, a cold fist squeezing his heart. He remembered going to sleep, the feel of his cotton sheets, the hum of his city outside the window. Now, this impossible scene. Ethan stumbled to his feet, the world tilting precariously. He gripped a weathered post, his knuckles turning white. This had to be a dream, a bizarre, vivid dream, didn't it? The next morning, Ethan woke with a gasp. His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. The room was dimly lit by the early morning sun filtering through the curtains, casting long shadows on the walls. He sat up slowly, his mind racing with fragments of a dream that felt too real to dismiss. He was back in his apartment, the familiar sights and smells washing over him like a balm. The scent of freshly brewed coffee from the kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator, and the sight of his favorite armchair in the corner, all these reassured him that he was home. Yet, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of his mind. Had it been a dream after all? The vividness of the experience made him question reality. He could still feel the cool breeze on his face, hear the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. It was as if he had truly been there, in another place, another time. He could still taste the salt air, feel the rough wood of the pier beneath his fingers. The memory was so tangible, so real that it left him unsettled. He shook his head, trying to dispel the lingering sensations, but they clung to him like a second skin. He went about his day, the unsettling memory lingering at the edge of his thoughts. At work, he found it hard to concentrate, his mind drifting back to the dream. His colleagues noticed his distraction, but he brushed off their concerns with a forced smile. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He tried to brush it off, to convince himself it was just a product of stress and lack of sleep. He splashed cold water on his face, hoping to jolt himself back to reality, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. The dream had felt too real, too vivid to be dismissed so easily, but deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. Then, it happened again. That night, as he drifted off to sleep, he felt a strange sensation, as if he were being pulled into another world. He woke up in another place, another time. This time, it was a dense jungle, the air thick with humidity, and the cacophony of unseen creatures. The sounds of the jungle were overwhelming, a symphony of life that was both beautiful and terrifying. He could feel the damp earth beneath his hands, the rough bark of the trees against his skin. Panic surged through him, raw and immediate. He looked around frantically, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The jungle was alive with movement, shadows flitting between the trees. He felt a primal fear, a sense of being watched by unseen eyes. This was not a dream, he was sure of it. The sensations were too real, too immediate to be a figment of his imagination. He could feel the sweat trickling down his back, the heat of the jungle pressing in on him from all sides. Desperately, he clung to the one constant he had, his memories. He remembered the pier, the marketplace, the feeling of the rough wood beneath his fingertips. Each time he woke up, the previous day's experience was vivid, real. He knew he had to find a way to understand what was happening to him. He couldn't keep living in this state of confusion and fear. He needed answers, and he was determined to find them, no matter what it took. Desperately, he clung to the one constant he had, his memories. He remembered the pier, the marketplace, the feeling of the rough wood beneath his fingertips. Each time he woke up, the previous day's experience was vivid, real. He remembered the pier, the marketplace, the feeling of the rough wood beneath his fingertips. The memories were his anchor, his only link to reality in a world that seemed to be slipping away from him. Each time he woke up, the previous day's experience was vivid, real. The line between dream and reality blurred, leaving him in a constant state of uncertainty. But he knew one thing for sure. He had to find a way to break the cycle, to reclaim his life from the grip of these relentless dreams. The third loop brought him to a bustling city, a stark contrast to the tranquil jungle. Towering skyscrapers pierced the clouds, neon signs blazed with unfamiliar characters, and the air hummed with a frenetic energy. He found himself in a crowded market, the smells of street food and spices assaulting his senses. People jostled him, their words a torrent of unintelligible sounds. He couldn't understand them, he couldn't ask for help. Then, he saw it. Scrawled on a discarded newspaper written in English were the words, "The key is repetition, find the pattern." A clue? Was someone trying to guide him, to help him make sense of this madness? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city, Ethan felt a familiar pull. The world dissolved around him, the vibrant city fading into darkness. He woke with a start, sweat slicking his skin, his heart pounded in his chest, the remnants of a nightmare clinging to his consciousness. The room was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the city outside his window. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. His apartment, safety, but for how long? The familiar surroundings offered little comfort. He felt a creeping sense of unease, as if the walls themselves were closing in on him. He glanced around, searching for something, anything that could anchor him to reality. The note, the message about repetition, what did it mean? He picked it up, reading the cryptic words over and over, hoping for some revelation. The handwriting was unfamiliar, yet the message felt deeply personal. It spoke of cycles, of events, repeating endlessly. As he went about his day, the events of the previous loops played in his mind like a broken film reel. Each moment felt like déjà vu, a haunting reminder of his entrapment. He tried to focus on his tasks, but the memories kept intruding, pulling him back into the past, the pier, the jungle, the city. Each location was vivid in his mind, yet they felt disconnected, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. He wondered if they were real places or just figments of his imagination. Each scenario was different, yet there had to be a connection, a thread that tied them together. He spent hours poring over notes, trying to find patterns, clues that could lead him to the truth. His mind raced with possibilities, each more outlandish than the last. Then a memory flickered. A woman on the pier, her silhouette framed by the setting sun. She seemed familiar, yet he couldn't place her. Who was she, and why did she haunt his thoughts? Her eyes filled with a strange sadness. It was as if she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. He felt a pang of empathy, a connection that transcended the boundaries of his fragmented memories. She had been humming a haunting melody, a tune that seemed to echo in the recesses of his mind. It was both comforting and unsettling, a reminder of something long forgotten, a tune that seemed vaguely familiar. Was she a clue? He couldn't shake the feeling that she held the key to unraveling the mystery. But how could he find her? And what would he say if he did? A guide in this disorienting journey? He hoped so. He needed someone to help him navigate the labyrinth of his mind, to make sense of the chaos that surrounded him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was trapped in some sort of twisted game, a game where the rules were constantly changing. Every time he thought he had it figured out, something would shift, throwing him back to square one. And the rules remained frustratingly elusive. He felt like a pawn in a game he didn't understand, a game where the stakes were his very sanity. The more he tried to grasp the rules, the more they slipped through his fingers. The only certainty was the terrifying reality of the reset. Each time he woke up, it was as if the world had been wiped clean, leaving him to start over. The fear of the unknown gnawed at him, a constant reminder of his precarious existence. The next loop brought him back to the jungle, the humid air clinging to him like a second skin. He found himself drawn to the sound of music, the same melody the woman on the pier had hummed. He followed the sound, pushing through dense foliage, until he reached a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a small hut. An old woman sat outside, her eyes closed, her voice weaving the haunting melody. He recognized her instantly, the woman from the pier. He approached hesitantly, unsure of what to say or how to explain his presence. As if sensing him, she opened her eyes, her gaze piercing. "You're back," she said, her voice raspy with age. "You're getting closer to the truth." Before he could question her further, the world dissolved once more. The following loop found Ethan back on the bustling city street. The city was alive with the hum of activity, people moving in every direction, each lost in their own world. The cacophony of sounds, from honking cars to snippets of conversations, created a symphony of urban life. Amidst this chaos, Ethan's ears caught a familiar tune. He decided to follow the only lead he had, the music. It was a haunting melody, one that seemed to call out to him, pulling him through the throng of people. He searched for the melody, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Each step he took felt heavy, laden with the weight of his past encounters and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The music grew louder, more distinct, guiding him like a beacon. He found it emanating from a small, dimly lit bar tucked away on a side street. The bar's exterior was unassuming, almost hidden, as if it were a secret waiting to be discovered. The soft glow from inside hinted at a world apart from the bustling city outside. As he stepped inside, the music washed over him, a soothing balm to his frayed nerves. The bar was cozy, with dim lighting casting warm shadows on the walls. The atmosphere was intimate, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. And then he saw her. His breath caught in his throat as he recognized the familiar figure. The woman from the pier, the jungle, stood at the bar, her back to him. She seemed out of place yet perfectly at home, a paradox that only deepened the mystery surrounding her. She looked exactly the same, ageless, her presence radiating a quiet strength. Her posture was relaxed, yet there was an undeniable aura of power about her. He knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that she held the answers he sought. The questions that had plagued him, the mysteries that had haunted his every step, all seemed to converge on this moment. He approached her, his voice a raspy whisper. The words felt heavy on his tongue, laden with the weight of his desperation. "Who are you? What is happening to me?" His questions tumbled out, each one more urgent than the last. She turned, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and knowing. "You're trapped, Ethan." Her voice was soft, yet it carried the weight of truth. "Trapped in a loop of your own making." Her words echoed in his mind, a chilling reminder of the reality he faced. "A loop," Ethan echoed, his mind reeling. "But why? How do I escape?" The woman's gaze held his, her expression grave. "You're reliving the same day, Ethan, caught in a cycle of regret. The only way to break free is to right a past wrong." He searched his memories, his heart pounding against his ribs. A past wrong? What had he done? The woman's words were a lifeline, but they offered little in the way of concrete answers. He woke up with a gasp, the weight of her words pressing down on him. Time was running out. He could feel it in the marrow of his bones. He had to remember, had to atone, before it was too late. The pier. He was back on the pier. The smell of salt and seaweed filled his nostrils, bringing with it a strange sense of déjà vu. This time he knew he wasn't alone. He saw her, the woman, sitting at the edge of the pier, her gaze lost on the horizon. He approached her slowly, his heart heavy with a mix of hope and despair. "Tell me what I need to do," he pleaded, his voice hoarse with desperation. "Tell me how to break free." She turned to him, a sad smile gracing her lips. "The key, Ethan, lies in forgiveness. Forgive yourself." Forgive himself? What did that even mean? Before he could ask, the familiar feeling of disorientation washed over him. The world around him dissolved, the woman's image fading into nothingness. He woke with a gasp, back in his apartment. The clock on his nightstand blinked 6 a.m., the same day, the same loop. Had anything changed? He didn't know. The woman's words echoed in his mind. Forgiveness, a past wrong. He was no closer to understanding. Was he destined to relive this day forever, haunted by an unknown mistake, a forgotten sin? For the first time since this ordeal began, a flicker of doubt ignited within him. What if there was no escape? What if he was trapped?